is it so cold?
Took you long enough.
Yeah, good thing you chose an easy spot.
Chapter 2. Also, because I forgot to mention, last chapter. This is part 3, War for Demise. I stood up from the couch and said, alright, let's go to Darren's. Scar held her hands up for me to help her up. She needed about as much help as a cactus needs pruning, but I pulled her up anyway and said, give me just a minute, I want to grab my stuff. Scar said, we're literally just going next door. I said, yeah, I still want to be prepared. I went up and grabbed my scabbard with Talonthorn inside and put it on my belt, slipping the familiar leather loop into my belt and securing that in there. I hadn't worn it to school because you don't need it at school, but if we were doing traveling things, I wanted my stuff, especially if we were going next door. We went out I grabbed a key from the phone in the kitchen and went out the front door. As we walked across the yard, I couldn't help but hesitate. Traveling interdimensionally barely took a thought, but crossing my front yard, that was hard. Scar and I went into the backyard, where we got to his back door. Scar said, alright, now things get interesting. And she went to pull out a lock-picking set or something. And I said, we could do that, or we could just use the key. And Scar said, you have his key? I said, yeah, we're next door neighbors, in case he loses his or something. He has our key too. We'll take care of our plans when we're on trips. It wasn't like we were enemies until 2 months ago. I'd never had to worry about it before, but I could tell Scar thought that was crazy, but we used it to open up his door, which squeaked a lot more than I would have liked. Give him plenty of preparation to know that we're there. We went inside and I said, alright, let's scout around his ground floor and then check out the basement. I didn't want to get caught in the basement and be trapped down there because we hadn't made sure that he wasn't upstairs. We started in the kitchen, checked through the pantry, and we went through the living room, hallway, closets, bedroom, bathrooms, office, nothing there. And then went down the basement. Scar held her lightsaber, which I was happy about. And I flicked on the lights. He wouldn't know we were there anyway, and it would help eliminate any element of surprise. We came down and looked through his main bottom floor and a few storage rooms and closet, nothing there. And Scar said, well, he's not here, but there may be some clue of where he may be as a traveler. And I let her start rifling through things as I noticed a pile of familiar items in the basement. I went through and picked up my broom. That was going to be nice to have. I had Blaze, but, you know, he had his own things too, and it'd be nice to have anyway. Always good to have backup. I opened up my scabbard, slipped out the leather loop and uncinched it so it was a wide thing, and tucked the broom in there. I didn't need the handle sticking out, but I just leave it in the scabbard somewhere because it didn't take up any space, right? Pocket dimensions are nice. And my Elvish sword was there. Talonthorn worked great, but again, good to have backup, and tucked that in there, as well as my potions and my mobile, and I even managed to fit the Jedi book in there. Everything that I'd had before, it was nice to have back. As I was closing up my scabbard, Scar sighed and said, "Yeah, nothing here." I said, "That's okay. You ready to go?" And she said, "I want to check his study again, his office. See if there's anything in there." I said, "All right, but let's make it quick. I don't want him to come home and have us be snooping around his house." And Scar said, "What are the chances that he'll come home in the 30 minutes that we're here out of the last month?" And I figured whatever the chances were, now would definitely be the time for him to come home. But we went into his study that was full of books and papers. The blinds let golden light in through the window, and it felt like we'd stepped back into a moment of time. And I thought about the smell of Darren's house. We'd had him over for dinners before. I'd been in his house for random things all through life, and it was strange to be here now, after everything had changed. Scar started rifling through his things as I looked around at the books that he had on his bookcases. All kinds of books, and they were almost all fantasy, sci-fi, historical fiction, all kinds of random things. And pulling out an old dusty book I'd never seen before, I looked through and saw that Darren had written notes in it. I flipped back to one of the pages with notes, and there was a note, "Powerful amulet," like, "look for this," or flipping around, "here's a possible tie to this world," and flipping here, "here's how to take care of spurters. Chuck says that they have a tendency to travel, so important." It's just interesting to see all the things that he'd had, and I'd never known that he was a traveler. Scar started laughing, and I said, "What?" And she said, "Did you know that Darren was a personal trainer?" I said, "What?" And she showed me a business card of the face of a young Darren Wise, all muscular and ready for personal training. And I thought, what? I had no idea about that. She said, "This must have been before his traveling." I mean, that makes sense. He is insanely, he can just do so much. That makes sense. Though he must have gone through some crazy programs. And I thought, yeah, he was a good fighter. I don't know where he'd learned, but... And Scar continued to look through things as I looked around. And she said, "Reggie, look at this one." And pulled out an old paper. And I looked, and it was covered in concentric hexagons and things, each separate. It looked like a writing of some kind, but destiny doesn't work on Earth, so... And I said, "Could you read it out loud? I can't read that here on Earth." And she said, "Oh, right. Yeah." And she began to read the prophecy that had started it all, now with so much new meaning. "Sired in world of own, shall be the saviour of the darkened. We that see not, lest a mind break forth, to free the lost, to right the course, when life of feather and reproof our path from thought to world of truth. Not long acquainted lead, but new, and one, the broken, guide him through, and one to worlds, and one to stay, but both to darkness, both betray. And thus the gift shall take its course, and steed to driver, rider, horse. To end the rule, a life required. When seer versus seer, the seer that sired to kill shall fall, and all shall see that all as once again shall be. It gave me a lot to think about. It was nice to know that that was done, fulfilled. Didn't have to worry about that anymore. But I understood it now. There were still some parts I had questions about, but yeah. Scar finally put back the papers, and I could tell that this was hard for her. And she began to tear up as she went through these things, and I wanted to say something about Darren. I knew that she wouldn't like that, and so I didn't say it, but I could tell that she knew I was going to say it. And instead, I just said, Scar, it's going to be okay. We've got you. And she said, gee, you don't understand what it's like for me. Traveling is this new novel thing for you. And I said, I've lost people too. And she said, yes, you've lost friends that you made a month, weeks before. In the last year, I've lost every parent figure I've ever had. My mom to the hospital, my dad to his drinking, Grant to the Profithians, Darren to the rebellion. You don't know what it's like for me. I came around to just kneel by the chair and put my arm around her. I said, well, you've got us. We'll be your family. And she said, you don't understand. I don't want more family. I don't want to lose anybody else. And her frustration was lost to sobs, and it was adorable and heartbreaking. I just held her. I didn't say anything else. Just held her, and after a few minutes, she calmed down, and she said, well, that's the worst emotional outbreak I've had in a while. You don't tell anybody about this, or I'll drop you in that chasm to join the seer, the Profithian seer. I said, I won't tell a soul. And she took one last look around the study before standing up and said, I'm ready to go. I said, all right. As we headed out the back door, she went to the kitchen and started pouring herself a glass of water. And I said, Scar, there's water at our house. Can we just leave, please? And she said, what? Are you so worried about leaving so soon? We're fine. You need to put yourself in danger way more often. Besides, I've had your water. I've never had Darren's water. I said, I'm going to ignore what you just said. I'm just not super comfortable with being around here. And she's like, fine. She finished her drink and left the cup in the sink and went out the door with me. And we went back. Mind's full of thoughts of Darren and hoping that I wouldn't see him again. End of chapter 2.